Hello, this is Del Walker. This stately gentleman is Carl Laemmle, who was president of Universal Pictures during the time Oswald was developed. Laemmle had helped form Universal in the first decade of the 20th century, and by 1915 his leadership had led to the building of Universal City, the first mega motion picture factory in California. However, by the mid-1920s, other newer studios, such as MGM and Paramount, were fast becoming the leaders in the field. In an effort to put fresh energy into his company's presentations, Laemmle, along with his son, Carl Jr., sought out the M.J. Winkler Company, who at that time were major distributors of theatrical cartoons and some live-action comedy shorts. The firm had been founded by Margaret Winkler in the early 1920s. The company was now headed by her husband, Charles Mintz. The firm already had in its stables two popular cartoon series that were being produced in New York, Felix and Crazy Cat. More importantly to our story, though, they also distributed the Alice comedies that were being produced in California by then a relatively unknown Walt Disney. The Alice comedies had begun in 1923 and featured a live-action little girl who had adventures in a land of cartoon characters. Alice's main cartoon comrade was Julius, another cat, who excelled in getting Alice into and out of trouble. By 1927, however, Disney felt that the series had run its course and wanted to move into a fully animated presentation. Universal's arrival presented a golden opportunity, and negotiations through Winkler proceeded briskly. Not surprisingly, Universal was adamant that their new cartoon star was not to be a cat. After some thought, the Lucky Rabbit concept came into being, and the name Oswald was actually chosen by Universal's publicity department. Almost immediately, Universal began advertising promotions for the new cartoon star, even though his design had not been finalized. Once the contractual details were finished, Disney and Ub Iwerks began working out conceptual models for Oswald, while the rest of the staff wrapped up the Alice series. This wonderful photograph was taken at about this time. The little girl to the left of Walt is Lois Hardwick, the last child actress to play the role of Alice. And behind them, from left to right, are Walker Harmon, Ub Iwerks, Hugh Harmon, Rudy Ising, Friz Freleng. To the far right is Walt's brother Roy. It's likely you've heard of a few of these folks before. In April of 1927, Disney forwarded the first completed Oswald cartoon, which was titled Poor Papa. Unfortunately, this first film did not pass muster with the Universal execs. Oswald was given the role of a suspender-wearing hayseed, trying to fend off swarming hordes of rabbit children, who who were being delivered by flocks of storks. This wasn't the image Universal envisioned. They wanted a more adventurous character that looked younger and had some roguish elements to him. Poor Papa was shelved, although it was eventually released the following year. The film is now unknown in any collection and could easily be considered the holy grail of Disneyophiles should it ever be found. Taking Universal's criticisms to heart, the next film, Trolley Troubles, cast Oswald in a more adventuresome role as the feisty owner of a ramshackle trolley car. As you can see, the action was practically non-stop, being ripe with great animation gags and chock full of various funny animal characters. Universal liked this film very much and gave it a prestigious booking at the newly opened Roxy Theater in New York City. And by all accounts, the cartoon was a smash hit, and almost instantly, Disney and Universal had the top cartoon series in the motion picture industry. As the series progressed, Ozzy's design became more smoothened and refined, as can be seen here in this excerpt from the Ocean Hop. He was also given a reoccurring nemesis, who features prominently. This is Pete, sometimes called Pegleg, sometimes Putrid, but all the times diabolical. Their competitive rivalry anchors many a cartoon, and Pete proved to be quite the masher when it came to women as well. Sadly, though, it just didn't all hold together. With the Oswald series such a huge success, Charles Mintz became wary of his role as only the distributor for the cartoons. He took steps to gain control of the actual production of the films by quietly offering better-paying contracts to Disney staff as the first season drew to a close. Most were happy to get in line, the most notable exception being of Iwerks, who remained loyal to Disney, at least for a few more years. When Disney traveled back to New York to discuss the upcoming new release season, he was also offered a contract to work directly for Mintz. But understandably, this wasn't an arrangement that Disney wanted any part of. And as we all know, Disney, along with Iwerks, moved on to greater things. Though it wasn't an easy path, at least initially. Mintz himself had a formidable challenge: how to honor the second year's contract with Universal. He had the staff, but no studio yet established. While Mintz scrambled to secure a production facility, he shrewdly re-released two of Disney's earlier titles and slipped in Poor Papa as well to cover the first 6 weeks. However, once his new studio was established, the cartoons lost little momentum, primarily because they were being made by the same people still. But, as the season continued, internal frictions did develop. Charles Mintz proved to be extremely cost-conscious. He was concerned primarily in meeting the release deadlines, not necessarily in producing a quality product. And while the former Disney animators had higher baseline wages, Mintz ended the incentive bonuses that Disney had awarded for new gag ideas and storylines. And Mintz even went as far as to deny a purchase order for curtains for the rented studio building. He suggested that his staff tape newspaper to the offending windows if the sun was really hurting their eyes. This type of management did not sit well for long, and there began to be defectors. Hugh Harman, along with Rudy Ising, even went as far as to submit an appeal to Carl Laemmle to operate the studio themselves, citing their concerns with the Mintz management. Laemmle pretty much brushed the offer aside, but this did have the effect of putting Mintz under scrutiny. Also, now that Disney was resurfacing in a big way with his sound cartoon, Steamboat Willie, Laemmle had to be questioning Mintz's business sense. For now Disney was making hit films for someone else. It was about this time that Walter Lantz enters into Oswald's story. Walter had cut his teeth in the animation field by animating various Hearst newspaper comic strip characters for film snippets that were shown with the early newsreels. About 1922, he worked for the J.R. Bray studio, producing another live-action animation series called Dinky Doodles. Walter himself was a featured character in these comedy films. And the series was actually an inverse of Disney's Alice series, with cartoon characters moving about in the real world. This excerpt from the film The Hunt shows Lantz to be quite adept with visual gags, many which would play well in his fully animated cartoons for years to come. Unfortunately, the Bray studio closed in 1927, and Lantz, successful as he had been, was now kicking around for ideas. After giving it some consideration, he did what many New York theater artists had done before him. He said his goodbyes and traveled across country to Hollywood, California. Walter was not the proverbial starving artist, however. The Dinky Doodles series had left him with a solid financial footing, and on-screen exposure as a minor comedy star didn't hurt either. Through social connections, he ended up at the Max Sennett studio, working as a gag writer and occasional bit-part actor. Through general kibitzing, he soon found himself in among the Laemmle social circles. It was during this time that he heard of the Mintz studio disharmony. It's not clear whether the Laemmles asked him to investigate the studio, or he just did so on his own initiative, but he could hardly have had better timing. And with his newfound experience with Oswald cartoon production, the golden opportunity was there for the taking. There are numerous speculative stories as to just how Lantz ended up heading Universal's in-house studio, beginning with the third season in mid-1929. I won't go into these now, but what is certain is that Lantz pretty much had to start from scratch. Two key people made it possible for him. The first was Clyde Geronimi, who had worked with Lantz for many years on the Dinky Doodle series. The real coup, though, was in signing Bill Nolan. Nolan had previously been working for Mintz at the Crazy Cat cartoon production house. And aside from iWorks, Nolan was probably the most accomplished and experienced animator to be had. Oswald was in good hands.